Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Clay, and I am the Bucks believer. The NBA Finals between the Phoenix Suns and the Milwaukee Bucks will take off on Tuesday night, and I am simply excited. This is going to be a fantastic series, and in order to prepare both myself as well as you guys for this series, I'm going to be breaking down my preview and prediction for this Finals. Let's start by talking about what happens when the Suns are on offense and the Bucks are on defense. This is a showdown of top 10 units, as the Suns ranked 6th in offensive rating this year, and the Bucks ranked 10th in defensive rating. The biggest question on this end of the court for me is what scheme the Bucks will be defending the pick and roll with. Phoenix is a pick and roll heavy team on the offensive end of the court, and that means Milwaukee is going to have to do a good job of defending that action to really succeed. There are a variety of looks that the Bucks could throw at the Suns out of this action, but there are two schemes that I think will be the most effective. The first of these is the drop coverage. This has been the standard pick and roll coverage for the Bucks during their time under Mike Budenholzer, and it's usually their most effective as well. However, this is not true when Giannis Antetokounmpo is out. To have Brook Lopez sinking all the way back into the paint, you need a high-level help defender on the weak side coming over to provide assistance to the guy who's basically forced to let his man go into no man's land. And with Giannis out, the Bucks don't have a great replacement in that role. Guys like Jrue Holiday and PJ Tucker are great as on-ball defenders, but they're not as good of help defenders, not even on the same level of a help defender that Antetokounmpo is. With Giannis out, I don't think we see as much of the drop coverage, but if Giannis is healthy, we could see it a bit more. Perhaps in this series, it's not something the Bucks should bring out at all because the Suns are one of the best mid-range jumper shooting teams in the entire league. Chris Paul and Devin Booker are both terrific at knocking down those shots in the mid-range, so perhaps the Bucks should go more with their other option for the pick-and-roll coverage, even if Giannis is healthy, and that would be their switch scheme. This is where the Bucks are basically going to switch each and every screening action that the Suns throw at them. This is a look that the Bucks used quite frequently in their last series against the Atlanta Hawks, and it worked to great success, as in the last two games where Coach Mike Budenholzer used it more frequently than he had in the first four games, the Bucks won both matchups and had solid defensive showings in each of those two games. The biggest flaw with this switching scheme is that it puts Brook Lopez on an island against guards if the opponent attacks it correctly. I think that if the Bucks did this, we'd see a lot of Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton pick and roll, leading to Lopez guarding Paul. That's probably a recipe for disaster for the Bucks. As well, Lopez did do a good job of guarding guys like Kevin Huerter and Bogdan Bogdanovic when he was switched onto the perimeter last series. I'm not sure he'll be able to have the same level of success against terrific ball handlers and shooters like Paul and Booker. If the Bucks can't thrive with Lopez out there, they're probably going to have to sub him out and go with a smaller unit. That causes a lot of trouble for the Bucks with Giannis out, as they are left with not enough small players to throw out there. They can use Bobby Portis as a classic five-man, and he's much better at switching than Lopez is, but I'm not sure that that's a great look for the Bucks either. So overall, I'm very curious to see what the Bucks try out, and I'm not sure that they have a fantastic answer for what the Suns are going to do in the pick and roll. In general, I also think that it's interesting to question how the Bucks will try to match up with the Suns stars. The first of these guys is Chris Paul. Paul is a terrific point guard who's great at creating contact with his opponent and getting to the free throw line, while also having one of the best mid-range games in the league. He's also a terrific passer who's great at setting up his teammates for layups and threes. I think the best matchup the Bucks have for Paul is Jrue Holiday. That's going to be true with both CP3 and Devin Booker, but I think that the Bucks should primarily use Jrue on Paul because of his craftiness. Holiday is a very disciplined defender who is going to do a good job of keeping Chris in front of him and cutting off passing lanes to the guys that Paul is trying to set up for easy baskets. I'm excited to see this matchup between two of the best point guards in the league, and if Jrue can hang in there with Paul, who I think most people would give the advantage to in this matchup, it greatly increases the Bucks' chances of winning this series. The other options the Bucks have to throw at CP3 are PJ Tucker, Pat Connaughton, and Chris Middleton. I think all three of these guys will see a smattering of opportunity guarding Chris but in general, I'm not sure that any of them is a matchup I'm in love with. Tucker is a really good guard defender on great isolation players, but Paul is more of a pick and roll player, and PJ has some trouble guarding the pick and roll. So for that reason, I think Jrue's definitely the best option of the Bucks ball hounding on ball defenders that guard at an elite level. On the other hand, I think that Tucker is a great option on Devin Booker. We saw PJ do a great job of defending Kevin Durant, and in my opinion, Booker is much closer in play style to KD than he is to CP3 or even Trae Young. Booker is a great scorer in the pick and roll as well. However, he's best off when he's isolating against a poor defender. We saw that at the end of the Bucks regular season game against the Suns, which I was at, by the way, where Booker was working against Tucker one-on-one. He was able to use the ball fake, get PJ to go in. Devin leaned in, drew a foul, and ended up making 3 free throws to sink the Bucks in overtime. Anyways, I do think that PJ has a solid chance to hang in there with D-Book and slow him down in this matchup because of his excellent coordination and his ability to keep guys in front of him. He's also going to be in the right position at all times and contest all of Booker's jump shots. If he can fight through the screens, or even if the Bucks are switching, I think that PJ is the best option on Booker outside of Holiday. But when you consider that Jrue's probably going to be guarding CP3 whenever Paul's on the court with Jrue, then you have to give it to your next best option, and to me, that's clearly PJ Tucker. Outside of Tucker and Holiday, the guys that we're going to see on Booker are Connaughton and Middleton. Once again, I don't quite have the same trust in those two players defending high-level ball handlers as I do in Tucker and Holiday, so I think that should probably be a pretty low roll for those guys, but they certainly are another option, especially if Tucker and Holiday get into some foul trouble. The final question that I have on this end of the court is whether or not the Bucks will be able to dissect Phoenix's offensive mix. Coach Monty Williams for the Suns is one of the most creative offensive minds in the NBA today. He does a great job of running very difficult to defend sets for his team. Phoenix is one of the biggest proponents of Spain pick and roll, double drag screens, off-the-ball pin downs for their best players to get them open for jump shots. The Bucks have had trouble in general guarding these complicated offensive schemes in the past. That was evident in both their matchups this regular season against the Suns and against the Utah Jazz, who are another team that loves the double drag. If the Bucks are trying to switch those actions, the Suns could really punish them because the Bucks are not necessarily the smoothest team when it comes to those switches. Once again, if the Bucks are playing the drop, it could lead to a player finding himself wide open for a jump shot. If the Bucks can figure out how to guard these complicated sets, I think they have a solid chance of slowing the Suns down, but I don't necessarily see that as super likely, and for that reason, this has a chance to be an explosive offensive series shooting the basketball for the Suns. This regular season, Phoenix scored 117.7 points per 100 possessions on offense, while the Bucks 112.1 points per 100 possessions. I think the Suns will score roughly 116 points per 100 possessions if Giannis is out for this series. I think that Antetokounmpo is super key to what the Bucks want to do on the defensive end of the court, and they'll be much better on defense if he is healthy. If he is on the court for much of the series, I think the Suns score much closer to 113 points per 100 possessions instead of 116. With that being said, let's move on to talking about what happens when the Bucks are on offense and the Suns are on defense. The Bucks had the 7th best offense in the NBA this season, and the Suns ranked 6th in defensive rating. So once again, we have a matchup of top 10 units. The biggest question on this end of the court for me is, if he is healthy, how will the Suns attempt to slow down Giannis Antetokounmpo? This question actually has a fairly simple answer. They're going to put DeAndre Ayton on him. This is a look that we saw frequently from the Suns during the regular season, and in general, I thought that Ayton did a pretty solid job with Giannis. He was able to keep the Greek freak in front of him and did a nice job of contesting his shots at the basket. However, at times those contests became physical. Ayton worked himself into foul trouble and was not able to play heavy minutes against the Bucks because of the load that he took on guarding Giannis. If Giannis can get DeAndre into foul trouble, that could be a very good thing for the Bucks, as the Suns don't really have another great option of slowing him down. Jay Crowder did a solid job in the Bucks series against the Heat last year, but he was more of an off-the-ball defender instead of being the primary guy on Giannis. When the Bucks faced the Suns in the regular season this year, Antetokounmpo would frequently take Crowder into a side isolation position where he was easily able to get to the basket and finish. The Suns have a couple other options they could throw at him. Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Torrey Craig, and Dario Saric are all at least okay defenders on the perimeter. The guys like Bridges are actually terrific, but I'm not sure he's strong enough to guard Giannis. So in general, with that quartet of guys, I think they're probably toast trying to guard Antetokounmpo. When it comes to how the Suns guarding Giannis, Ayton's clearly the best option, and if he gets in foul trouble, this could be a field day of a series for Giannis. All of this is assuming that the Greek Freak is healthy, but I'm not sure what to think on that stance. So let's move on and talk about how the Suns will attempt to guard Khris Middleton. I think that this is another pretty simple question to answer. Khris is going to be seeing a heavy dose of Mikal Bridges. This could spell trouble for Middleton. Bridges almost made an all-defense team this past regular season, and in my opinion, he probably should have. What he does as a disruptive wing defender who uses his length to its best ability is terrifying as an offensive player, and he is actually someone who matches up very well with Khris. The biggest reason for that is Bridges' biggest lack of skill on the defensive end of the court is his lack of strength. He has a hard time guarding some of the bigger, stronger wings in the league like Kawhi Leonard or Paul George or LeBron James. Khris is a great offensive player, but strength is one thing that he's lacking, and his jump shot oriented game could be shut down by Bridges' gigantic wingspan. I have some concerns about Khris in this series, especially when you consider that the Suns have a couple other solid options to put on him, such as Jay Crowder, Abdel Nader, and Torrey Craig. Let's talk about now who the Suns put on Jrue Holiday. I think that this is a lot of CP3. If the Suns have anyone besides Paul on Holiday, this is a matchup the Bucks can absolutely take advantage of. Players like Cam Payne, Devin Booker, and the previously mentioned Johnson, Craig, Saric group are not going to be able to defend Holiday. The Suns are going to have to try to keep CP3 on him as much as possible, and if they don't, we could see Jrue really get it going as a driver. That's incredibly key for the Bucks because Holiday's driving kick game is one of their best sources of offense. He does a great job of finding shooters on the perimeter for jumpers and also finding players like Brook Lopez and Bobby Portis under the basket for easy finishes. Getting Lopez going in this series will be key for the Bucks, especially if Giannis is healthy, because that means that Ayton is defending Giannis and a smaller player like Jay Crowder or Cam Johnson is guarding Brook Lopez. That means that Brook's going to have a significant size advantage under the basket, and if Holiday can get him open shots at the rim off of that drive and kick, it's going to result in Brook having a pretty big series, perhaps even something similar to what he did in Game 5 against the Hawks, where he dropped 33 points on 18 shots. Another key for the Bucks in this series is Bobby Portis. I actually think that this is a really solid matchup for Bobby. That's because his defensive lack of ability cannot be taken advantage of, because I think the Bucks are going to be doing a lot of switching instead of playing the drop coverage scheme where Portis really struggles. Because of his defense not being an issue, Portis' offense should be a big plus for the Bucks. That's especially true when you consider that, once again, DeAndre Ayton will not be defending Bobby. Portis should have a significant advantage against Dario Saric or Frank Kaminsky in the backup center minutes, and if the Suns try to put a smaller player like Crowder or Johnson on him, that's bad news for Phoenix, because Bobby has mashed mismatches in the post this season. The Bucks can also exploit Cam Payne whenever he's on the court. Payne is a solid defender who's gotten much better, but he's still a liability on that end of the court. He's not capable of guarding players like Jrue Holiday or Khris Middleton, to say the least. If Payne's ever matched up on one of those two guys, or if the Suns are switching a lot of motions and the Bucks can get him switched onto those guys, they should go right at him and take advantage of Cam's lack of size and strength and try to get some easy baskets in that way. This regular season, the Bucks scored 117.5 points per 100 possessions, while the Suns allowed their opponent to score 111.5 per 100. If Giannis is out, I think the Bucks score about 112 points per 100. If he's healthy, I think that the Bucks can increase that average to closer to 114.5 points per 100 possessions. That leads me into my final prediction for this series, and overall, this is a bit of a cop-out, but I think that it really depends on the health of the Greek Freak. If Giannis doesn't play for this entire series, I don't see the Bucks having much of a chance, and I think that the Suns win this one in 5 games. However, if Giannis plays the whole series, I think that the Bucks have a significant advantage because of their size and physicality, and I think that the Bucks would win in 6 games. the chances are that it's going to probably be somewhere in between those two extremes. I don't know if Giannis will be ready for game one, but I also don't know if he's going to miss the whole series. Because of that, I have no idea what to predict for this series. So I'm not really making a definitive pick because Giannis' status is so unknown. But either way, I will be cheering my heart out for the Bucks on Tuesday night, on Thursday night, and from there on out. Because this is the furthest I've seen a team that I really love make it in the NBA playoffs. And this Bucks team is probably my favorite team of all time. So if they win the finals, it's going to be a big celebration in my household, and I'm sure it will be for fans across the world. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you did enjoy this video, and let me know in the comment section down below what you thought of this series. Who do you think is going to win? What is your prediction? I think that I've covered everything that I wanted to cover, so that's going to be it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all again very soon.